A palace confirmation is never just information, it's a weapon wrapped in polite language. In this dramatized account, one official line detonates across royal walls. Princess Charlotte is named owner of the Queen's private estate. Not future caretaker. Not symbolic heir. Owner. And within minutes the atmosphere turns electric, because this isn't only about property. It's about power, legacy, and who the monarchy is choosing to elevate. While someone else is forced to watch, smiling through fire. Before we go deeper into what this really means for the royal family, make sure to subscribe so you don't miss a single update. Because that estate isn't a random asset on a balance sheet. It's sacred space in royal terms, private, personal, and stitched so tightly to the late Queen's identity that even mentioning it feels like touching something you're not supposed to touch. For decades, it has represented the one thing the monarchy rarely grants itself, a corner of life not built for performance. That's why the palace confirmation hitting the air so directly feels like a tremor. The palace doesn't speak plainly unless it wants the message to land hard. And when the wording is clean, official, and unusually firm, it suggests urgency. Or intention. In royal language, owner isn't a cute label. It's control, it's access, it's influence. It's the ability to decide who can enter, who can stay, who can claim familiarity with the Queen's most intimate world. It's the kind of power that doesn't need a title to be felt, because it changes the geometry of the family overnight. Suddenly, a child holds something adults quietly crave, a key to legacy. Not the public legacy, the ceremonial legacy, but the private one. The version of the Queen that existed away from cameras and crowds. And when that kind of control is transferred, it doesn't just reorganize property. It reorganizes people. That's why the ripple is immediate and unmistakable. Staff tension rises like static. Households scramble in silence. Calls are made that sound casual but aren't. Conversations become shorter, sharper, and more careful, because the palace understands one brutal truth. The first people to sense a power shift are never the public. It's the courtiers. The aides. The ones who know which doors used to open automatically and which doors now require permission from someone entirely new. And when those people start moving quickly, it means the palace isn't simply announcing something, it's preparing for fallout. And in this dramatized account, the most explosive fallout sits in one place: Camilla's position, suddenly complicated in the worst possible way. Publicly, she can't react. She must smile. She must embody stability. But privately, a different reality begins to form. A feeling of being cut out of a space she assumed would remain within her reach, or at least within her influence. Because this isn't just a child receiving something sentimental. This is the monarchy signaling where the Queen's private legacy is being anchored. And where it is not. That's what makes the announcement feel less like generosity and more like a boundary. A line drawn with beautiful handwriting. A decision that arrives already sealed, already accepted, already beyond debate. And the psychological sting of that is sharper than any open argument. In royal life, being politely excluded is a special kind of punishment. It says, the decision was made long before you heard it. Your feelings were never part of the calculation. Your role was never considered essential to this future. Then, the quiet paranoia starts. Because if the palace is willing to assign ownership with such forceful clarity, it implies a deeper motive, something they want settled, something they want prevented, something they want people to understand without ever saying it out loud. It's not just Charlotte inherits, it's Charlotte is protected. It's Charlotte is elevated. It's Charlotte is the future of this particular legacy. And if that's true, then the question becomes even darker. Who was this meant to neutralize? That's when a courtier's hint lands like a match dropped into dry grass. Not shouted, not presented as gossip, just a carefully placed suggestion from someone who understands how words are chosen in palaces. The wording was selected to make a point. That phrase is chilling because it means the palace isn't reacting to events, it's shaping them. It's using language like a blade, cutting paths through the family without ever appearing cruel. If the wording was meant to make a point, then someone wanted someone else to read it and feel it. Not in public. In private. Where it hurts more, and suddenly, Charlotte's name stops feeling like a child's name in a sweet announcement, and starts feeling like a symbol the institution is willing to wield. A child at the center of an adult battle. A legacy placed into small hands not because she asked for it, but because the monarchy understands that nothing is more unchallengeable than innocence, backed by official confirmation. You can't attack a child without looking monstrous. You can't dispute the transfer without looking jealous. It's a masterstroke of protection and a masterstroke of pressure, because it forces everyone to swallow their resentment with a smile. And if the palace chose those words carefully, then the next question becomes unavoidable: who wanted Charlotte elevated? And who did they want punished? This isn't a palace the public tours. It's not a glittering landmark for cameras. In this dramatized story, the Queen's private estate is something rarer, a place where the monarchy stopped performing and started living. Which is why naming an owner isn't just paperwork, it's a transfer of sanctuary. And when sanctuary changes hands, the old protections collapse, revealing secrets that were never meant to survive the Queen herself. Because this estate has always been spoken about in that careful royal way, never too loudly, never too specifically. As if naming it too clearly would invite the outside world into rooms that were designed to stay sealed. It isn't famous for its grandeur. It's famous for its silence. The kind of silence that holds grief without spilling it, that absorbs arguments without echoing them, that keeps private rituals protected from the public hunger for spectacle. For the Queen, it was not just land. It was the last place where she could be a person before she had to be a symbol again. And that's why the emotional weight of this transfer hits like a slow, heavy drumbeat. You're not watching property change hands. You're watching privacy move from one generation to the next. That's what makes the estate uniquely sensitive. It has access lists that aren't like other lists, names chosen not for status, but for trust. It has private archives that don't exist to impress historians, but to preserve the parts of royal life that were never meant to be polished into mythology. It has personal staff who learned long ago that loyalty here isn't about gossiping politely. It's about forgetting what you saw the moment you saw it. And when a place is protected like that, it means there's something inside worth protecting. Not just valuables. Not just heirlooms. Truths. So when ownership shifts to Charlotte, the air changes in a way even the palace can't disguise. Because a new owner means new keys, new permissions, new authority over what remains locked and what becomes accessible. It means the Wales household suddenly holds something deeply powerful without needing to demand it out loud. And it means everyone else, especially those who assumed they would have influence over the Queen's private legacy, now has to confront a humiliating reality. This sanctuary has been assigned, officially, away from them. And then the whispers begin about the locked rooms. Not in a theatrical fairy tale sense, but in that chilling institutional sense where everyone knows there are spaces you don't enter unless you're invited, and invitations don't come through casual requests. There are drawers that were never opened in public, cabinets that were never inventoried for anyone's curiosity, a desk that remained exactly as it was because touching it felt like breaking a vow. And above all, there are sealed instructions, quiet rules that the Queen herself may have left behind, designed to activate only when the time was right. That's where the foreshadowing turns sharp. Because ownership doesn't just unlock doors, it can unlock letters, diaries, agreements, the kind of private records that rewrite how people understand the past. Not because they're scandalous for scandal's sake, but because they're honest in a way the monarchy rarely allows itself to be. The Queen's handwriting, the Queen's language, the Queen's private thoughts, things that could soften certain reputations and harden others. And if those items exist, then the estate isn't merely a sanctuary. It's a vault of meaning, which is why the emotional hook deepens into something almost unfair. Charlotte inherits not just land, but a burden of meaning. She becomes the symbolic owner of the Queen's most private world before she's even old enough to grasp what that world cost. Adults around her will treat her ownership like a chess piece, but the truth is more heartbreaking. This little girl is being given a legacy so heavy it could bend the room around it. And the moment people realize what the estate might contain, they stop seeing Charlotte as a child and start seeing her as a gatekeeper to the Queen's final truth. Then comes the detail that makes the palace feel suddenly smaller. A sealed clause in the Queen's instructions. Not a rumor about emotion, a rumor about structure. A condition. A line, a boundary written in the Queen's own decisive language, meant to protect something or someone from future manipulation. And once that clause is mentioned, even softly, it spreads panic through the people who understand what clauses do in royal life. Clauses don't argue. Clauses decide. Clauses enforce outcomes without needing anyone to raise their voice. And once whispers of a sealed clause emerge, the story stops being about inheritance and becomes about intention. Camilla knows the rules. Never flinch, never fuel the fire, never let the public see the storm. But in this dramatized account, the Charlotte announcement hits like a humiliation dressed as tradition. Because it doesn't just elevate a child, it draws a boundary around Camilla's reach. And in royal life, being politely excluded is worse than being openly attacked. It means the decision was made long ago, and you're only hearing about it now, because that's what makes it sting, the calmness of it. The palace doesn't announce it like a debate, it announces it like destiny. And when destiny is declared in the Queen's name, Camilla is trapped in the most suffocating position of all: loyalty versus resentment versus optics. She can't protest without looking selfish. She can't celebrate without feeling erased. She can't even ask too many questions without inviting the suspicion she's trying to avoid. So she does what the crown demands. She holds her face steady while the ground shifts under her. And the whispers sharpen immediately, because the palace never allows a single explanation to sit alone. It's the Queen's will, one camp insists, as if the late Queen's authority is being used like a shield nobody can challenge. It's Charles's decision, others murmur, because the King's signature carries its own kind of finality. Then comes the most dangerous whisper of all. It's William's push. That one lands like a knife, because it reframes the entire transfer as strategy, not sentiment. An heir's household, quietly locking the future into place while the current order watches and pretends it isn't threatened. And that's the emotional conflict Camilla can't escape. It isn't just about an estate. It's about being pushed away from a space she expected to influence. A space tied so tightly to the Queen's private world that being excluded feels like being judged. Like being told, politely and permanently, you will not be the keeper of this legacy. You will not have the keys. You will not have the quiet authority that comes from access. And in palace politics, access is power without a crown. The fear beneath it grows colder. Charlotte's ownership doesn't just transfer property. It reshapes hierarchy. It creates a new center of gravity, one that sits inside the Wales family's orbit. Because once a child holds a sacred asset, adults must move around her carefully. They can't attack her directly. They can't challenge her without looking cruel. And that's what makes the move so devastating. Charlotte becomes a shield, whether she realizes it or not, and the people around her inherit the leverage. In this dramatized scenario, the estate transfer isn't random generosity, it's strategy. Because William and Catherine understand a brutal truth, power in the monarchy isn't just titles, it's assets, access, and what you can protect behind closed doors. Giving Charlotte ownership doesn't just secure her future, it creates a protected lane for the Wales family's influence, one that cannot be easily redirected by anyone else, no matter how high they sit today. And that's where the asset strategy becomes obvious in the way the palace reacts. Quiet calls, tightened schedules, a sudden seriousness in conversations that used to be friendly, because long-term leverage doesn't need to shout, it only needs to exist. If Charlotte is positioned as a future anchor, an independent influence inside the family, then this move signals confidence that borders on dominance. Not dominance in headlines, dominance in infrastructure. In the unglamorous mechanics of ownership that decide who controls privacy, who controls access, and who controls the Queen's most intimate legacy as time moves on. For Catherine, the emotional layer feels different. Her protective instincts would see this as safeguarding her daughter's future from palace turbulence, from shifting loyalties, from consort politics that can change with a single new alliance. But the same protective move can be read as hostile by others. That's how palace hostility grows. One side calls it security, another side calls it power grab. And the institution watches both sides harden as if it's inevitable. Because in royal life, even love becomes political the moment it produces an outcome. Meanwhile, Camilla performs calm in public while allies scramble behind the scenes. They study the wording, they measure the timing, they search for weak points. And slowly, the idea of a countermove takes shape, not necessarily loud, not necessarily obvious, but designed to restore balance. Because Camilla's circle knows something the palace never admits openly, once you allow the Wales household to formalize dominance through assets, it becomes harder and harder to challenge them later without looking desperate. Then, the warning arrives. As sharp as it is simple, Camilla won't accept this quietly. And the room goes tense. Because everyone understands what that means in a palace. Quiet doesn't mean harmless. Quiet means calculated. Quiet means strategic pressure applied where cameras won't see it until the damage is done. But when Camilla's allies start moving, the palace responds the only way it knows how, with tighter silence and sharper lines. And if Camilla won't accept it, then the next chapter is inevitable, a battle not for land, but for control of the Queen's legacy. The most dangerous documents in royal life aren't speeches, they're instructions. In this dramatized account, the Queen left something tied to the estate, a clause, a condition, a line that wasn't meant to be debated in public. And when Charlotte becomes owner, that line activates. Because the Queen didn't just pass down property, she passed down a decision, one designed to protect the monarchy from a future she feared. Because hidden clauses don't exist for decoration, they exist for control. The sealed clause was kept out of sight for a reason, because the moment it becomes known, it becomes weaponized. It turns into a compass for every faction inside the palace, each one trying to claim the Queen's intention as their own. And once the estate shifts to Charlotte, the clause stops being a rumor and becomes a living force. It doesn't ask permission to matter. It simply starts shaping what happens next, pulling strings from beyond the Queen's lifetime. But what does it mean? That's where the palace splits into two interpretations, so extreme they can't peacefully coexist. Some insist it's protection, a safeguard designed to keep the Queen's private sanctuary from being diluted by politics, pressure, or the wrong kind of influence. Others see punishment, a deliberate boundary line drawn by the Queen's hand, meant to limit certain people, certain households, certain ambitions. And in royal life, the difference between protection and punishment often depends on where you're standing. One side calls it preserving dignity, the other calls it being shut out. In this dramatized story, the most terrifying hint is that the clause doesn't just set rules about the property. It restricts access. It quietly names categories of people who must be kept at arm's length, specific households, specific roles, specific circles, that once assumed they could move freely. And that changes everything. Because ownership already gave Charlotte symbolic power. A clause like this gives her structural power. It turns Charlotte owns it into Charlotte controls, who touches the Queen's legacy. It makes the estate not just a sanctuary, but a gate. Then comes the emotional twist the palace can't spin. Charles may be bound by the clause, not empowered by it. That's the nightmare for a king discovering that the Queen's final instructions don't simply honour the crown, they constrain it. That the late Queen, even in absence, placed rails on the future to prevent the monarchy from drifting into something she feared. And suddenly, Charles isn't the final authority on the estate's power. He's the steward of a decision that might limit the very influence he's expected to balance. Paranoia spikes immediately, because now the most valuable currency isn't money or titles. It's knowledge. Who has seen the clause? Who has only heard about it? Who is interpreting it correctly, and who is twisting it on purpose? The palace becomes a maze of half-truths, whispered summaries, and carefully edited explanations that sound helpful but feel manipulative. And once confusion spreads, it's easier to control people, because people can't fight what they can't clearly define. That's when the leak lands like a match thrown into dry grass. Someone claims the clause mentions consort influence. Two words that sound technical, but hit like an accusation. Because if the Queen explicitly drew lines around consort influence, then Camilla's fury isn't simply personal. It's existential. It means the late Queen anticipated a struggle for control and preemptively anchored the estate away from the consort's orbit. It implies the Queen didn't just worry about legacy, she worried about who might try to steer it. And as the palace absorbs that shock, the conflict turns fast and sharp. Because the moment a clause threatens influence, influence fights back. In royal conflict, the loudest weapon is silence. No screaming. No public feud. Just meetings you weren't invited to, doors that don't open, and decisions announced after they're already irreversible. In this dramatized story, Camilla's camp launches a counterattack not with insults, but with influence press pressure, behind-the-scenes persuasion, and the subtle suggestion that Charlotte's ownership is inappropriate. And that's when the palace atmosphere turns dangerous. The tactics are soft, but the intent is hard. Leaks that don't accuse directly, just raise questions. Briefings that sound concerned just protecting a child. Alliances shift in quiet corridors, with people choosing sides without ever admitting they've chosen. The narrative is reframed with surgical precision. This isn't power politics, they insist. It's safeguarding Charlotte from burdens, from scrutiny, from risk. But everyone inside the palace knows what that framing is really doing. It's trying to make Charlotte's ownership look like a mistake that must be corrected for her own good, of course, so the estate can be pulled back into a different orbit. In response, William's household tightens control. Fewer access points, stronger communications, less room for interpretation. Because they understand the truth about palace warfare, you don't win by making the best argument. You win by controlling the lanes where arguments can travel. And in the middle of this tightening, one emotional reality becomes impossible to ignore. Charles is caught between his wife and his heir's household, trying to hold the center while the floor splits under him. Every attempt to calm the situation risks looking like weakness to one side and betrayal to the other. Then comes the twist that makes the whole thing feel even more dangerous. A surprising ally emerges, someone who benefits from chaos. Someone who doesn't need to win the estate to win the war. Someone who only needs the family divided long enough for other changes to slide through unnoticed. And as that shadow presence grows, the final warning arrives from the kind of person the palace listens to when it's too late to pretend nothing is happening. A legal advisor suggests this could trigger formal review. Not gossip, not drama, process. And if the clause truly draws lines around consort influence, then Camilla's fury isn't jealousy, it's survival. And once lawyers enter the room, the monarchy stops being a family and becomes a machine A child shouldn't inherit a war. But in this dramatized account, Charlotte becomes the symbol both sides can't stop pulling. The estate isn't just land, it's the Queen's shadow, the monarchy's memory, and a private power base. And the tragedy is simple. Charlotte doesn't need ambition to become dangerous. She only needs ownership. Because ownership makes people reveal who they are when they think the future is slipping away. Because the moment her name is tied to that sanctuary, innocence becomes leverage. Charlotte is framed as a child in the public imagination's suite, distant from politics, protected by her age. But inside the palace, her ownership reads differently. It reads like an anchor. A protected lane, a long-term guarantee that the Queen's most personal legacy will sit under the Wales umbrella, guarded by the people who will shape the monarchy's next era. And that's why adults begin circling her future like it's a prize, even while insisting they're only concerned for her well-being. The emotional contrast is what makes it sickening. On one side, childhood school days, family warmth, the kind of life that should be untouched by power games. On the other side, palace warfare whispers, alignments, quiet meetings, and the cold reality that everything meaningful becomes strategic the moment it can influence the line of power. Charlotte doesn't have to speak to become a factor. She doesn't have to want anything. She only has to exist as the official owner of something everyone else secretly understands is priceless. And Catherine feels it immediately. Not as a victory, but as a threat disguised as a gift. Her protective instincts intensify because she knows how the palace works. The more symbolic power you hold, the more people try to shape you, use you, or isolate you. The estate becomes a shield for Charlotte's future. Yes, but shields attract strikes. Catherine's response hardens into something quietly fierce: tighten the circle, reduce access, control information. Keep Charlotte away from anyone who might plant resentment or confusion. Because the most dangerous battles in royal life are fought inside the mind through narrative, suggestion, and fear. Meanwhile, Camilla's resentment evolves. It stops being a reaction and becomes a strategy containment. Not necessarily public opposition, but the kind of containment the palace excels at: framing, whispering, and slow pressure. The estate transfer is rebranded in certain circles as too much, too soon, unfair, or most effectively of all, a burden for a child. And that framing is clever, because it disguises power politics as compassion. It gives the palace a moral cover to challenge the Wales household without admitting what it's really fighting over: influence. Because the fear underneath all of it isn't just about who holds keys today. It's about what Charlotte might learn tomorrow. What happens when she's older and the estate's archives are no longer just locked cabinets, but questions she's finally allowed to ask. What happens if ownership unlocks letters, diaries, instructions, pieces of the Queen's private truth that don't fit the tidy public story? The palace can manage headlines. It cannot easily manage a future royal who owns the evidence of who people really were behind closed doors. That's when the cliff edge appears, delivered by a staffer in a voice that sounds almost guilty for saying it aloud. There are letters inside that estate. Not rumoured. Not imagined. Letters. And letters are dangerous because they have authors, dates, intent. Letters don't bend for optics. They don't care who is angry or who is threatened. They simply exist, waiting for the right hands to open them. And if those hands belong to Charlotte one day, then the transfer isn't just ceremonial, it's volatile. The palace believes it can control optics, but power moves leave fingerprints. In this dramatized story, naming Charlotte owner forces everyone to choose, accept the new order, or challenge it and risk tearing open the Queen's legacy in public. And Camilla, watching the door to influence close, faces a brutal truth: she can either submit to the Wales family's rising dominance, or set fire to the peace to prove she still matters. So the aftermath begins the way royal aftermath always begins: quietly, brutally, and with rules. New protocols. Tighter access. No exceptions. The palace converts panic into structure. because structure is how it regains control. The estate becomes more protected than ever, not because it's newly valuable, but because it has become newly contested. And with every new restriction, the family fracture deepens. Polite unity remains on the surface, but underneath it is permanent distrust, the kind that doesn't explode in public, but never heals in private. Charles is forced into the mediator role, and that role is a trap. If he leans toward Camilla, he risks igniting the heir's household. If he leans toward William and Catherine, he risks confirming Camilla's fear that she has been sidelined. Every attempt to balance looks like weakness to someone. Every attempt to calm looks like surrender to someone else. And in the shadows, the most dangerous dynamic takes shape. An unexpected figure benefits from the turbulence. Not necessarily the loudest person, but the one who gains space, influence, or leverage while everyone else is focused on the estate. Then comes the final twist that turns dread into certainty. Insiders hint this was phase 1, not the end of a conflict, the start of a new order. And just when the palace thinks it has sealed the estate behind protocol, a new leak surfaces suggesting the property holds instructions for the future. Not memories, not sentimental notes, instructions. The kind that can rearrange loyalties, redraw boundaries, and expose intentions that were never meant to be discussed while the Queen was alive. And if there are letters, then this transfer isn't a gift, it's a fuse, and someone is about to light it. And as the palace doors close again, one reality settles in like a storm cloud. Charlotte didn't just inherit an estate. She inherited the next royal war. Thanks for watching. Please don't forget to like and subscribe, and we will see you in next one.